Hello, folks in the NAMM world. This is Nason Tackett and Max Silkowski coming to you from beautiful downtown Huntsville, Alabama. That's a site of our headquarters at Here Technologies, and hope you're enjoying the show. I hear there's a lot of really cool stuff out there, and we appreciate you coming in and taking a look at our stuff and being with us for a while. If there's any questions, just feel free to ask anytime. We'll try to do the best we can to just go ahead and answer them for you. This little session here basically is just a question that we get even on the show floor. People walk up and come up and look and say, what is this? Well, basically it's personal monitoring, and a lot of folks just really aren't familiar with what actually that does. So that's what this little session is. Personal monitoring is simply a way of getting what you need to hear, your stems or sources, routed to you in a very simple and efficient manner. In other words, when you're playing the drums, or if you're in an ISO room by yourself in a studio, you need to be able to hear what you need to hear without knocking on the glass. You've done it. I know you've done it. Don't say you haven't. All the weird hand gestures and all that stuff. Basically, personal monitoring is a way to take the engineer or the poor front of house guy that gets blamed for it, out of the equation, and it's up to you. You literally can take all the stuff you need and just adjust it yourself. And the whole premise behind personal monitoring is to make it as simple as possible, so that you can just get back to what you're doing, which is the performance. That's what matters, not the gear you're messing with. So the idea is, well, I'm just going to turn this. That's right. Go on with what you're doing. Personal monitoring really has been around for quite a while. There were all kinds of them out there for a long time. I remember the old Furman system that I really liked. It was great. It did what it did. And it just did it efficiently. It was simple. There's no learning curve to it. You just turned the knob, whatever you needed to do.
Yeah, we've talked to some people at like the AES show that said they had personal monitor systems that they had built with big analog snakes back in the 60s. So the idea has been around.
Yeah. And so basically what we've done is, with the advent of digital technology, that type of thing, we've been able to take multiple channels of stuff and just send it down a single Cat5. Now that is a real big boon really to everybody, because you're not going to trip over all this stuff that's all over the studio or on the stage. The cabling's cheap. Yeah, the cabling is very cheap. It's repeatable. You break one, you just put another one there. And it just makes it easy on, once again, the engineer, because time in a studio, that's money. Time is money. It makes it easier for houses of worship. It's just simple to set up. The one thing that folks don't understand, though, is there are really two kinds of personal monitor systems. There's one that's it's a one-to-one mapping. Okay, now that's what we're going to start with. A one-to-one mapping is a very simple thing. We have a hub. On that hub, we have an input. This input, we can take 8 mono sends, sources, stems, whatever you want, doesn't matter. They come in, the hub turns it into something that the mixers can understand. In this case, it's just ADAT over copper on the octo. Okay? Because this is a one-to-one mapping, each one of these mixer outputs here has those same stems. So in other words, all 8 of the channels, or 6, or however many you have coming in, goes out this output, this output, this output, this output. It's all the same. So every single one of your octo mixers has the same exact thing. Okay? Then you get to mix. I don't like the guitar player. I'm going to get rid of him. That type of thing. You mix what you need to hear where you are. Okay? One-to-one mapping is the most basic thing, but if you consider the very first thing about personal monitoring, the very first cardinal rule in personal monitoring is don't be afraid to submix.
Yep.
People come up and say the octa's only got 8 channels, I need more than that. Well, just simply whatever your console is, Like the drums don't need to all be broken out. Put all the drums on one knob. Take that submix to that channel. The bass player and maybe the rhythm guitar player, that type of thing, put them on another channel. And you can get the idea.
Yeah.
So basically, you don't have to break out the fourth trombone player and you know, do it that way.
If you're the engineer, you kind of want to see everything. You're used to seeing all those individual channels because you're mixing them. But you need to think about putting yourself in the musician's shoes. They're not there to mix. They're not the engineer.
No.
They need to perform. So in order to perform, it needs to be very simple for them. They don't need to get into dealing with EQ, dynamics, anything like that. That's your job, and you're supposed to send them processed stems.
Correct.
You know, rather than raw inputs. That's not the idea with personal monitor mixing.
So the second rule that Nason just touched on is post EQ, pre-fader.
Yes.
Any stem you send should be post EQ, so that all that's there. In other words, it's exactly how the audience or whatever's going to tape or whatever you're recording sounds, but pre-fader. You don't want the front of house guy getting up there and all of a sudden adjusting things because the house isn't full and you're going, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, and then suddenly your mix changes.
Your mix changes. All right. So that's the second rule on these things, and it's really simple to follow. Now the neat thing about the one-to-one mapping is, if you do fill up one of these guys, say that you just run out of channels, but you really got to break out those three vocalists on the front. Each one of them really needs to be able to hear themselves. Basically, take one hub, say, and make it the backline hub, the musician's hub. In other words, that's where you have all your drums broken out, maybe the rhythm guitar, the lead guitar, bass, that type of thing, then group all the vocalists on one. This is just one of the millions of examples. Take a second hub, make that the front line. That's the vocal hub, where you can put, if you wanted to, submix the entire band into one knob or maybe a stereo feed and let the vocalists have their thing. And that way, everybody's happy with it. In fact, we even make a product called the Mixback that was built under that exact premise.
And see, and then it keeps it simple to the musician. So
Exactly.
You're not giving 64 things for one musician to deal with. Keep this simple. So the idea is you can use an 8-channel system for even very large setups if you basically have one knob that is everything, and then just the more me's that particular group needs to hear. So rhythm section would have the rhythm section broken out on the other 7 knobs, but maybe the entire mix is on one, whereas the vocalist would have their own hub with the entire band on one knob, and then the vocalist broke up, and then so on. You can keep adding more hubs with different feeds going into each one of them, and then it gives the musicians just 8 things to have to deal with, which is in itself a lot to deal with while you're trying to perform. Don't think about dumping all the channels and say, here you go, mix yourself. Well, when you're trying to perform, that's not an easy task.
Yeah. The people didn't come there to sit in the audience and watch you work a piece of gear. They came to see you perform. And that's the whole idea behind it, is to keep it simple on this type of a level. The other neat thing about this is, say that you're a praise and worship band and you travel. The neat thing about this, or any of the systems really, is it's easily repeatable. Okay? You've already got everything set up in the console, that type of stuff. These guys are easy to set, or you can even mix them. This is the drummer's mixer, that type of thing. When you set up, it makes the sound check and everything else just that much simpler. So you don't have to go through, well, let me see, would you have to shoot the room for the monitors, that type of thing. So you're actually looking, once again, it's just keeping things simple, repeatable, and to the point that, say, if someone does sit in, it's not going to kill them. In other words, they can actually figure it out rather simply. Now, so basically, one-to-one mapping, everybody gets the same thing. All right? And we have a mixer here. We got one of the octos here. And it's just a simple demonstration that, as I turn this up, if I don't want to hear the drums, I'm a drummer, so I get to play with the musicians. And of course, to me, if I'm sitting here mixing this, I can tell you already by looking at this guy, I'm going to turn the drums up and the bass guitar. I'm going to get rid of that. The vocals, I don't even want to hear the background vocals. Keys and everything, I'll just keep down there. So basically, all I want to be able to do really is hear the bass player, enough guitar so I can figure out where I am. Okay, and that's just about it. But I came from the time when there were no monitor systems back when I was doing this. So you turn the cabinet in to hear somebody. This stuff is so much nicer. It's just, and once again, the neat thing about it is the repeatability. It just doesn't take that much time to set it up once you get used to it. Now, did you have something?
No, yeah, I was going to say one really important thing I want to jump in and say here is that in order for a system like this to really work well, it needs to have a really good pair of headphones or in-ear monitors to complement it. This is only going to sound as good as the headphones or the in-ears that you're using with it. You can't expect to plug in a pair of like iPod earbuds and hear what you need to hear while you're performing live off of this thing. You really need a good pair of, actually we resell Future Sonics, and they're killer. Max has actually got a pair of their molded earbuds. They were the pioneers of in-ear monitor technology, and in my opinion, the best out there. Or a good pair of studio headphones. So that's one very, very important thing, because if you're going to use a cheap pair, then it's only going to sound as good as those headphones.
And there you go. And we'll get into that just a little bit more in just a few minutes. But that is basically the one-to-one mapping. Does anybody have anything on that or a question? Simple to get into, simple to use. And a lot of companies still make them out there. We're one of them with the Octo, which used to be the old system, which of course went away. But the Octo is 100%, reverse forward compatible with it. The second kind of personal monitoring system enables you to route in submix. And what that means is, whereas in the original system, or the first system here, point to point, in other words, the drums are always on knob 1, say. With the other system, you actually have the ability to make each mixer different. So in the example that I gave, that we had a front line hub and a back line hub, with the larger system, basically you can just use the same hub, but every mixer can be routed differently. So in other words, if you've got, say, 16 channels, you can actually maybe put on this one, put maybe the drums here, the bass here, your vocals here, whatever you want to do. But on the next mixer, I don't want to hear that, okay? So drums, bass, and all that's going to get mixed into one down here, and I'm going to break out the vocals because I'm, one of the lead vocalists, that type of thing. So you can do it on a mixer-to-mixer basis.
And that simplifies things. You don't want to have to clutter every single mixer with a bunch of inputs that they may not need. One person might only have 3 knobs that are functional, where somebody else might have all 16 that are functional.
Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have to submix maybe at your console. No, that's still a big deal.
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea. It really is, because that just makes it simpler to set up your mixers. Okay, like if you got 3 snare drum mics, just put them on one. I mean, it's a fold back system. You can hear that.
Your vocalists, you might want to have them all on one knob along with their reverb. Basically treat it like it's a stem, so that all they have to do is turn up that knob, and it's processed, it's EQ'd. They don't have to worry about all that stuff. It's going to be polished and it's going to sound nice, and all they have to worry about is the level of what they're hearing.
Right. So that way, you can literally have the entire band set up exactly how they need to be. Okay. And here's where it comes into the good stuff. Most of the things, in fact, when I was traveling back in the day and all that, the wedges were king. In other words, so we had, the band up there and the wedges along the front. How many times you've been to a concert when somebody steps in front of that and, man, the feedback just goes crazy. Now our mixers, of course we do have line outs. You're more than welcome. You can actually use wedges, whatever you want to do. Whatever works for you, that's the thing. But the big deal with the personal monitoring systems is the advent of the earbud is really what turned this thing on its ear, especially for the house of worship market and the live market. And the reason we're going there is with a molded earbud, I'm not talking the one you get with your phone, I'm talking actually one that you go to an audiologist and have them made. Once they fit your ears very well, it's called bone conduction. Bone conduction is a great thing, and you really hear whatever is there. You hear it just very, very well, which leads us to the next cardinal rule of personal monitoring is you're not trying to make everything louder than everything else. Now, you know where that came from if you, any Deep Purple fans out there, but look, what you want to do, you don't have to, if you can't hear yourself over, say, the guitar player, you don't need to crank yourself up. Just remember, you can turn the guitar player down. In other words, take it down to where you need it rather than pushing it up. With your ears sealed, properly sealed, you don't have to have it that loud. It's better for you. It's safer for you.
You're blocking out all that stage noise.
You're blocking out all that stage noise, and you don't get fatigued. I know that, man. By the end of the night, when I'm playing rock and roll, that type of stuff, man, my ears were gone. They were tired. So that's the whole idea behind this, is you can literally adjust it. It doesn't have to go up in volume. Bring it back down. Bring the other things down, and you'll be surprised. It just
takes a little bit of adjustment.
It does.
It is different.
It does, and I can say that I've worked with folks, and we've had folks on that just really didn't want to do it. But once they tried it and actually got used to it, and it's hard to get away from once you get used to.
You can suddenly hear everything you need to.
Exactly, and it's and like I said, the neat thing about that is it eliminates feedback, big time. Now we've actually had folks at shows that actually crank everything wide open. When we had a mic there, it would go squeal, and scare them to death. But for the most part, all that stuff's gone. The other neat thing about personal monitors, especially in a live situation, is if you've ever been a front of house guy trying to mix against the backwash of those wedges bouncing off this wall, that wall, going hit, and just the RT60 throughout the room, no wonder you go home and just don't want to be bothered. I mean, think about it. With any of your monitors, with a personal monitoring system, all that's gone. Which leads you to the next thing, which is what a lot of places, especially houses of worship, try to go to a silent stage. That is one of the, especially in a small room, that type of thing is one of the best things you can do, for the simple fact you can bring that PA volume down and you don't have to worry about bringing it up against the monitors. I think Nason has mentioned he owned a sound company, and he's gotten to the point on some place he just turned the front of house off.
Yeah. I had people complain that it was so loud, doing some of these, smaller wedding venues and things where people would come up and say, it's just too loud. And I would say, let me show you something. And I would turn the PA off, and they wouldn't even believe me. And it was just completely, monitors hitting the back wall and coming out into the room. But, go into a system like this, you can completely eliminate that. The trick, though, is that you do have to get away from using the guitar amps, the bass amps, things like that. You do have to go direct. You really want to probably consider going to electric drums or putting the drums in a separate drum room like they do in some...
Do it in a booth, the plexiglass walls or whatever you got to do. It really, really helps. The neat thing about this is, I was talking about repeatability before. If you actually have this set on your console and these guys are here and you got in-ears in, the only thing you have to go in for, really, for a sound check is just to get the front of house right.
That's right.
Monitors are set. You're done. In fact, we've had several bands that have been out and did some tours and all that with the Pro system doing that exact thing. In fact, with the Octo system and a mix back, and just loved it because there was no setup.
Yeah, they basically would run all their mics and feeds into their own monitor desk.
Correct.
Feed the personal monitor mixers, and then give the throughputs to the front of house. So front of house guy, of course, had to dial everything in, and they were in a different club or a different venue every night. But at least their monitor rig was the same. They would walk up, they put their ears in, they were isolated from the room, and it was pretty much the same thing from night to night. So.
And that's just a wonderful thing. And the folks, once you get used to that kind of stuff, what concert have you gone to lately that really had wedges sitting across the front of the floor? Most folks really have gone to the in-ear. And with that, the next thing that you can actually do with a personal monitor system is something that really you can't do on a live stage, and that's communication. Mm-hmm. It is imperative a lot of times for somebody like, oh my gosh, we got to skip the next song. Everybody's yelling, you see people doing all this kind of thing. Whereas on a lot of the systems, especially our system, and I'm going to tout it if you hit, I think I'm hitting it, if you hit the intercom button, skip the next song, we're running short on time, you can talk to each other. Okay, there's communication back and forth. With the new overlay, which we will get into in detail later, you can even text somebody a message.
So
say, okay, the
engineer
lighting
can send.
Yes, the engineer can send a message. Drummer's dragging again, or whatever.
Send it to one person. Send it to everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So that's the big things about it is repeatability. Okay. Well, of course, safety, because you just turn stuff down, get it to the point where you can actually use it. All right. Silence. Get rid of all that feedback. Get rid of all the excess noise on the stage, especially, just with the wedges. If you can start there, it's a start. All right? And then communication. So all of that rolls in together into what a modern personal monitoring system is. And where's it going to go from here? You tell us. That's how our stuff ended up here. Our philosophy has always been just grab the knob, tactile feel, instant gratification. Yeah, I'm going to turn that down and move on.
Menus, you don't have to hit a button first, just a knob, very easy to use.
And then just go with it, okay? Get back to what you're doing, that type of thing. But tell us what you want. That's how all this stuff ended up this way. And the one thing that everybody said in everything we did with the Pro was keep the knobs. And so
that's what we did.
That's what we did. And I know it looks like a lot of them, but it's really not.
It's not, no. It's very easy to use. They're grippy. Mm-hmm. Max has pointed out you can even turn them with your drumstick.
Yeah, just touch it with the drumstick, go on.
We've had some visually impaired people mention to us that
yes.
This is really the only system that they can use because the other ones are menu driven and they can't see what they're doing. So with ours, it's all there, it's all tactile and easy to use.
And the neat thing about a personal monitor system too is just the ruggedness. You can actually store the thing. It's small, it's easy to move around. You don't have the big wedges and the huge amplifiers and all that kind of thing. So, there's a lot of pluses there. And yeah, I can admit that there's a lot of folks that just really don't want to go there. But if you've ever been in a studio, you're probably using either one of our systems or somebody else's. They're out there, and it just makes sense there. And so it's something that erase all the mystery behind this thing. It's really just a way to get what you want to hear to you where you control it and get everybody else out of the equation.
Make everybody happy, the engineer,
yes.
the musicians, and we've got different approaches depending on what you need. That's why we redesigned the original one and created the Octo. We've got the Pro, so you've got very simple one-to-one system, a bit more complex routable system with the Pro. We've even got the Matrix, which is a new.
That's an interface, really.
Yeah, it's more. It's not. It's a headphone monitor, personal monitoring system, as well as an interface. So it's really kind of two products in one. But that's a very neat device because it's Dante without a hub, so it's just it's a standalone piece. But 4 in, 4 out, the ability to do your own personal monitor mix there. One thing I do want to point out is that all of our systems use the same headphone amplifier. It's a very powerful 5-watt headphone amplifier. It can drive a pair of headphones, in-ears, anything up to 600 ohms. It's got enough power to even power the 600 ohm headphones, which is very important because there's a lot of them out there that are 80 ohms, 250 ohms, and if you try to use those with some of the other headphone amplifiers that are out there, there's just not enough power. It ends up sounding tinny. So we've got a very powerful headphone amplifier, and that's really kind of the thing is with us is our philosophy is easy to use, absolutely dependable. This stuff is all built in the U.S. And the reliability and just the sound quality. We want to be the best sounding and most durable device that you can buy. Yep. And we're just a bunch of geeks, musicians, and sound engineers that we're basically kind of given the luxury of just designing this stuff. So we basically build what we want, and we try to build the best product that we can. So.
Yep. And it's all driven by the suggestions that our users actually give us.
Yep.
And that's how this stuff comes along. That's how that new overlay came around. And yeah, we just try to make it as easy as possible to just drop into what you're doing.
So I guess at this point, do we have questions?
Yeah, we got some questions.
So we got
folks out there?
Keyboard player finds it hard to set volumes for different patches and different songs. Hard to know if he's too hot or quiet up front. It's a 12-piece band. They never play anything in the same way twice. Practice room volumes aren't necessarily representative of a live gig mix. Any magic tips for trusting in-ears to tell me if I need to tweak my keyboard volume as I go?
So the question is, it's a keyboard player. You said it was a 12-piece band, and they are asking if we have any tips for doing in-ear monitoring and making sure that they are, especially from going from patch to patch, that they're not too loud. So really, I think with that, one of the things that I would recommend would be to for sure have a board mix on a knob, because you'll want to have individual things on some of the other channels. But if you want to see how you're balancing with everybody else, you really need to have the board mix that you can turn up, maybe even solo. The Pro system actually has the ability to solo that. So, and then if you want to hear kind of you more than everybody else to just kind of see how your different patches are, put your keys, and even maybe if you have several inputs, on some of the other channels so that you can bring those up. That would be my recommendation.
Cool.
Are there any developments and plans for wireless capabilities?
So the question is, are there any plans for developing any kind of wireless capabilities? Well, I assume that they're talking about wireless audio, because as far as doing wireless control, we've got that ability, using the app and a virtual mixer card, you can wirelessly control. Now, we did have a product called the Freedom Back for many years, and actually that ended up getting discontinued because of all of the new changes with the FCC allocating different frequencies for all the new cell phones and things like that. So, yes, we actually do have it on our plans to develop a digital wireless system, so that is coming in the future.
Can you explain again feedback elimination in your IEMs?
Okay, so the question is, can we explain feedback elimination with the IEMs? So basically, the idea is that once you go to using the IEMs, you eliminate the monitors. So once you eliminate the monitors, you eliminate the feedback. There is really there's no way to get feedback, because the sound is now coming out of your in-ear monitor, which is sealed, and none of that sound is going to get out. So you've basically eliminated feedback.
I think we're almost out of time. It went by so fast.
You can still ask us questions though on our channel. Keep those questions coming, and suggestions. We live off your suggestions. So come back tomorrow. We'll be on at 3 and 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time. So thanks for tuning in.
Enjoy the show.